In this video, we provide a lesson overview for lesson 10.1, which is about correlation. These slides are based on slides provided by Pearson to accompany our textbook and then modified by me for our course. The related material is from Chapter 10 of Essentials of Statistics, 6th edition by Mario Triola. In Chapter 10, we are covering 2 lessons out of several lessons in that chapter. In lesson 10.1, we'll discuss correlation briefly, and then we'll discuss linear correlation in particular. And then in 10.2, we'll discuss regression. Now, we've already discussed scatter plots, correlation, and regression. We did so back in 2.4, but at that point, we didn't have the statistical background to discuss those ideas in much depth. We hadn't discussed hypothesis testing yet. So the methods we used back in chapter 2 consisted of procedures with very little explanation for what we were doing and why we were doing it. In lessons 10.1 and 10.2, we're going to discuss what we're doing and why we're doing it. So we're just revisiting those ideas now that we have the background in hypothesis testing and some understanding of things like z-scores. In this lesson, in particular, we're going to discuss the properties of the linear correlation coefficient R, common errors related to correlation, and hypothesis tests for linear correlation using the critical value method and the p-value method. Here are lesson outcomes. First, we're going to define important terminology, including scatter plot, correlation, and linear correlation coefficient. We will construct scatter plots and use scatter plots to subjectively infer whether there's a correlation between 2 variables. We've actually already done this. We did this back in chapter 2, but we're revisiting those ideas again here. Then our second learning outcome is for you to be able to calculate and interpret the linear correlation coefficient R. I'd like you to be able to describe the rationale behind the formula or the formulas and explain how R describes the relationship between the variation of X and the variation of Y. And then third, we're going to learn how to conduct a hypothesis test to determine whether there's a linear correlation or determine whether there's evidence of a linear correlation between variables using the critical value method. In our fourth learning outcome, we'll learn 3 common errors related to correlation. And then in the 5th learning outcome, you'll conduct a hypothesis test again, this time using the p-value method. So that's the plan. I'll see you in the next video to discuss correlation, scatter plot, linear correlation, and the linear correlation coefficient in general.